Today we're printing posters, a 4-color, really tight registration poster. So I'm going to give it a shot, and hopefully I don't wreck things as much as this guy did. I've done poster printing in the past, but really only 1-color, maybe loose registration 2-color designs. And I've been looking for something new to do, something that I could find that allowed me to learn and do something new. For me, that's poster printing. I haven't really done poster printing. So I took something that I thought would be a respectable challenge. I'm gonna see if I can do it. I've got a sim processy look. It's a lot of halftone printing. So I'm pretty sure I know how it's going to turn out. Let's go over the tools that I'm using and why I'm using them. The first thing I have here is a vacuum Platen. So when you're doing any kind of paper printing, stability is really, really important. Now, we know that we can get away with like a little bit of tack on paper, but at some point that tack is going to hold on to that paper and cause the paper to tear. So it's not a great reliable source. For loose registration, 1-color stuff, we can absolutely get away with it. But I really like the vacuum Platen, so that's what I'm going to be using today, especially with multicolor, tighter registration. I'm also going to be using water-based inks. While you can technically print plastisol on paper, there's no guarantee that it's going to stick or maintain the look that you want over time. Water-based, even using Green Galaxy High Solids water-based, which is what I'm using here, will still soak into uncoated paper stock. Any water-based ink that you have on uncoated paper is going to work great. I'm using the Green Galaxy inks. I've custom mixed all of my colors using the Fusion mixing system just into our clear core base. One of the important things to understand when you're printing posters is you want a lot of extra space outside of your image area. So for that reason, I'm using 2331 screens, our auto screens, in order to do the poster. Now the poster paper is roughly 13 by 19, so my print is inside of that image area. Now it is a long pull stroke, but on an auto size frame, there's no problems with that. Nothing's gonna get in our way. Other than Anthony revving around on his forklift and letting everyone know he's on his way. Safety first. So that's why we're using an auto size frame, a 2331. We wanna make sure that our image fits nicely inside of our frame, so that when we take our squeegee, in this case I have a 16-inch squeegee, we've got plenty of space on all sides, so that we're not distorting the image, the mesh, any of that stuff. I am also using an 80 durometer squeegee. It's more on the graphic side of the industry, which again, we're printing on paper. This is graphic printing. This is new to me. I'm pretty sure I know how this is gonna turn out. I'm expecting some hiccups along the way. This is gonna be fun. I haven't been excited to print something new in a long time. I haven't played with water-based in a while, especially on video. Water-based being evaporative by nature is just a challenge to control when you need to pause for any kind of video reasons. I wanna give it a shot now. I want to see how well I can manage it, and as a result, give you guys really good content, good education and knowledge around water-based printing. So before I dive in and start inking up some screens, how did I get my screens registered? How do you start that process? A lot of us who come from textile screen printing, we'll line up our white or our black, print that image, and then line up to that image, putting tape over it or something similar. What I've done is I've taken my film positive and I've actually put it on the vacuum Platen in order to line up to it. So I'm gonna hit the vacuum real quick so you see that. So we just end up lining up to our film positive. Now, as long as we pull the squeegee consistently, everything should line up great. But if you're ever unsure of whether or not your screens have stayed in reg, and this is a very common thing to do when you're doing any kind of flat stock printing, is you leave your film attached via a little piece of tape to your Platen, and then you just let it flip over to the other side. And then if you're ever unsure and you need to check registration, you can pull that back and double check how everything is lining up, as long as your film, of course, doesn't move. So it's a great old school trick to ensure things are lining up. It's something that you can also do if you're printing on a clamshell, one-arm bandit, any of those types of presses. It's a great way to maintain consistency over a print run that could have tight registration. I think it's time to start adding some ink. First hit of the red, a little splotchy. So I'm learning in this what my pigment load should be when I'm making my inks. And I went with 10% scarlet into clear core. And I'm looking at this going, I probably should have gone a little bit higher. I probably should have doubled the pigment load, gone up closer to 20%. But these are all those learning curves that you want to go through. We're using our dryer today. We don't have your standard poster rack in which we can put down paper in order to let it dry in between colors. So I'm gonna accelerate that using our dryer, but I have it set really, really, really low, and we'll see how well that goes. I've noticed that the paper is really stable. I've already done some testing through the dryer. We'll see at the final screen how it looks. Using my 3-point stop to line my paper up again and hit the vacuum. Why do I have to dry or pull the paper off in between, especially if I've got a multicolor press here? The reason is simple. The ink is still wet, so we need it to dry, and putting it underneath the flash can end up causing distortions or ripples on the paper, which is why I'm being really cautious running this paper through the dryer, because normally we want it to remain undistorted. Paper's coming through, looking great. We're gonna check dryness here once I've finished all the red. But that's why we want each color to be dry, and then we print the next color on top. No wet on wet printing when it comes to paper. Well, you can, it just looks different. That is my last color. I need to be really consistent with my squeegee angle and pressure. Can't get lazy like I can in screen printing on t-shirts. And managing ink viscosity from beginning of print to end of print, and understanding where I lift off so that I get a clean lift. Notice a couple of spots on those where the screen kind of came up and slowed down and then came up again. So I've got a little texture. I did learn a couple of things. One, it's difficult to balance low temperature through our Aeolus dryer. Not that we can't get there, just that I'm learning as we go. And there is definitely a little bit of grip on the red coming out of it. And since we're trying to get these done in a sooner than later fashion, I'm not following proper standard procedure. I'm not taking my paper and putting it on a dry rack in order to let it properly evaporate before we do the next color. Bad on me in one sense, but it's also, this is a very real situation for a lot of us. We got to do posters, we got to do multicolors, and we got to do them quickly. So what is that best setup in your shop? Well, for me, I need to accelerate some of the drying. I'm going to see if it ended up distorting any of the paper from a shrinkage point of view here shortly. For those who don't know, you have different weights of paper. The lighter the paper, the more flimsy it is. Regular paper is very lightweight. This is 100-pound cardstock. Makes a really good thunder sound if you shake it. But it's usually pretty stable. All paper, when it's manufactured, has a grain. And when the paper mills are cutting it, they don't always cut with the grain. Sometimes you can get cardstock or poster stock that is cut with the grain going in one direction, then other sheets are the grain going in a different direction. So if you're causing rapid evaporation out of the paper, that paper can shrink in different ways. This is going to be most noticeable when you're doing things like screen printed transfers, which most of us don't do anymore, but it's still applicable if you're printing on any paper stock and then getting it hot. Other than that, I'm ready to clean my screen and set it aside and move on to color number 2. Let's see. The movement that I had was all in one direction, so I think that's the difference of my squeegee pull. After a couple of these squeegee pulls, we'll find out how accurate that is. Posters aren't perfect. Posters move because you're doing one color, drying it, putting it back in, doing another one, and it can be challenging in order to keep good, tight registration. Most posters have built-in traps when you're doing your artwork. I just happened to choose one that would challenge me and see if I could do it. I'm gonna pick a sheet at random here in the middle of the stack. And the goal is to look at my consistency. Everything that I've done so far has been consistent in one direction, which means that I was consistent, I just need to be even more consistent. So I needed to increase my off contact on this color. So in order to do that, because I don't have central off contact on the 250, I put a little piece of paper on the do not touch bolt to increase that distance. Getting there. So when I pull the screen down, I let it sit for just a little bit. The vacuum that we have attached to this is really strong. So it's still pulling air down, creating suction, even though all the other holes are covered. So it's actually pulling the screen down into contact. Yep, that's getting sharper, definitely. All the colors are dry. We found that the settings that I currently have for the Aeolus, 300 degrees, and a 3-minute retention works well if I run them through twice. Gets things dry enough to print another color on them. Not that everybody out there has an Aeolus, so they can do this. Figure out what works best within your shop, or just put them in a paper rack and come back tomorrow. Registration stayed consistent the whole way. Every now and then you'll just have paper that moves for multiple reasons, what I talked about before. Overall, I'm happy. I've got into the flow, figured out some of the hiccups that were happening. I'll apply that to the black that's up next. The challenge that I gave for myself, definitely challenging. I'm excited to see how this turns out. Now I created a CMYK-like black, a very, very halftone, translucent black. So this is not gonna come down heavy. This is gonna come down and darken everything up. And we're gonna see if I made a good choice or if I need to clean my screen and add a little bit more black pigment. I erred on the side of caution a little too much, so it's always easier to add than to take away. So I'm gonna go add a little bit more black. So now I know that what I want for a good black halftone is about a 6% add of the Fusion Black into clear core for this, maybe as high as 7. Why am I doing posters? I'm doing posters because I wanted to do something that I haven't really done much of, push into doing things I haven't done before. And I've only really done the one color stuff. I did one like really loose 2 color. So this is pushing my limits quite a bit. It's like, can I do it? What are my settings? What can I do with my tools from a screen printer's point of view? What can I do? And I've learned. I've definitely, next time I do something like this, it'll come together a lot better. And we got ideas. We want to do posters. All right, so this one is a true experiment. When you print on like packaging, you can do a clear overcoat, what looks like a gel overlay, nice and glossy. And it's called an aqueous coats, if I remember correctly. I'm looking for a way to do this kanji, which is kaiju, and have it look like it's wet or that there's a slight discoloration. I didn't want to damage what the print looked like, so I just wanted something clear. But I know that the Green Galaxy bases, you won't see them on paper. They're too clear. So I'm using our stretch core from Green Galaxy. It's a polyurethane. So you can see how it's quite a bit thicker. It's also going to dry faster. This could be absolutely terrible, or this could look amazing. Well, it's subtle. You might be able to say too subtle. I don't think you can pick this up on camera at all. It's just a very subtle gloss. I'm gonna print it on here, and I'm gonna call it good. All right, so there is the final print with that little bit of gloss, no gloss. You know what? I'm happy. This was my very first attempt to do something with a substrate, the poster paper that is, not always stable in an environment that I'm learning and figuring out. I'm happy with this print. For those of you out there who have done a lot of poster printing, leave comments below on all the things that I should have done different. I want to learn from you guys. I want to learn more about the paper printing, the poster printing process. Thank you all very much for watching. We really appreciate your viewership. Hope to see more of you guys in this year ahead of us. Like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing here, or if you just want to follow along and chuckle at some of my mistakes. Thank you all. See you in the next one. If this was plastisol, I wouldn't be touching it. Well, it'd all be wet on wet or flashing or whatever else. This one, I have to take the paper off of the Platen in order to